We often think about cybersecurity like it's all about building a fortress, right? A strong wall to keep the bad guys out. But what happens when someone actually gets inside? Well, that's when the real battle begins. And that's exactly what we're digging into.
So, get this. In 2024, the security world from Microsoft products hit a pretty unsettling milestone. A record 1,360 vulnerabilities were reported. That is the highest number we have ever seen since this kind of tracking started.
But here's where the data gets really interesting. A massive 40% of all those flaws, we're talking 554 of them, were in one specific critical category: elevation of privilege. Just think of that as the master key an attacker uses to go from a nobody on the system to its absolute ruler. And that's not just a random number. It paints a super clear picture of what attackers are really after. Yeah, getting in is one thing, but gaining the power to control the entire system, well, that's the real prize. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The experts are sounding the alarm. As CISO Kip Boyle puts it, the dominance of elevation of privilege vulnerabilities should set off alarm bells for every security professional. This isn't just about a statistic. It's about the #1 attack surface defenders need to be watching. So how do attackers actually pull this off? Let's zoom right in on a really sophisticated, real-world threat to see exactly how a high-tech breach like this can unfold. Okay, first things first, let's make sure we're on the same page. When we say elevation of privilege, or EOP, we're talking about the process where an attacker who has some limited access, well, they find a way to get way more permissions. This isn't just a small step up. We're talking about going from a regular user to a full-on administrator, or even gaining what's called system-level control. That's the highest level of power you can get on a Windows machine. So let's walk through an example. Imagine a zero-day vulnerability that targets the very heart of Windows, the kernel. This kind of flaw is so dangerous because attackers are out there actively using it before a patch from Microsoft is even available. Now, this exploit uses a really clever, complex technique called a race condition. The best way to think about it is like you're tricking two guards into opening a high-security door at the exact same instant. Their actions clash, the lock gets jammed, and suddenly the door is left wide open for you to just walk right through. So here's how it plays out, step by step. First, an attacker gets inside with just low-level privileges. Then, they run a special program that just spams the system's core, the kernel, with tons of requests. The kernel eventually gets confused and makes a mistake. It frees the same little piece of memory twice. That one error corrupts the system, and that's the opening the attacker needs to seize control. And just like that, they've got full system privileges. But here's the kicker. Attackers don't always need these super complex, brand new 0 days. Sometimes their absolute favorite strategy is to just use the tools that are already installed on your computer, hiding in plain sight. This strategy is called living off the land, or LOTL for short. Attackers use a system's own trusted pre-installed tools to do their dirty work. And it is incredibly popular because it's so stealthy and, honestly, brutally effective. And this really shows you the difference, plain and simple. Traditional malware brings its own custom code, which is noisy and usually easier to spot with things like file signatures. But living off the land, it's fileless. It uses the system's own tools, so all its activity just blends in with what a normal administrator might be doing. You can't detect it by what it is. You have to detect it by its behavior. So what are they using? Well, it's all legitimate, powerful admin tools. Things like PowerShell, Windows Management Interface, PSX, and even the simple command line. They turn these trusted tools against the very system they're meant to manage, making it incredibly hard for defenders to tell the good guys from the bad guys. All right, let's shift gears and look at a totally different kind of vulnerability. This one isn't some complex coding flaw. No, this is a simple but devastating administrative mistake from years ago that created an absolute goldmine for attackers. So for years, IT administrators had this massive headache. How in the world do you manage and change the local admin password on thousands of different computers across a huge network? Well, many of them turned to this very handy tool for Microsoft called Group Policy Preferences, or GPP. And on the surface, it seemed like the perfect solution. It let them push out new passwords to every single machine, all automatically. But here is the massive, critical flaw. GPP stored this new password inside an XML file, and that file got placed in a shared folder called sysvol, a folder that every single authenticated user on the entire network had permission to read. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but the password was encrypted, right? And you're right, it was, with strong AES 256 encryption. The problem? Microsoft had publicly published the private key needed to decrypt it, right on their own developer website. So any user could just find the file, grab that encrypted password, and use the public key to reveal the administrator password for literally every machine in the company. Ouch. So these two examples, one, a super sophisticated zero-day, and the other, a decade-old configuration mistake, they really drive home one crucial point. Simply patching all your systems is not enough to stay safe. It's like security advisor Anton Chavakin warns, if your entire security strategy hinges on patch all the things ASAP, you're going to have a bad time. You've got to have more tools in your toolbox. This quote right here perfectly captures the modern defense mindset. Charles Henderson, the former head of IBM's X-Force, says the most successful organizations build their security programs around the assumption that the threats already have initial access. The focus has to shift from just keeping them out to finding and stopping them once they're already in, before they can climb that ladder of privilege. So what does that actually look like? It's all about a modern, multi-layer defense. It means enforcing the principle of least privilege, so people only have the access they absolutely need. It means using zero trust principles, proactively hunting for threats, constantly auditing for those simple misconfigurations like the GPP flaw, and, this is key, monitoring for unusual behavior, not just for known threats. And all this really leaves us with a final, big question. As attackers get smarter and stealthier, as they use our own tools against us, is the future of defense not just about building higher walls, but about becoming better, more proactive hunters inside our own networks?